who is going to grab the crown this year? 26-year-old Jayson Tatum or 25-year-old Luka Doncic. To go to what we were saying earlier, Dan, it's just cool that two guys who have been anointed as like next, like to go back to Minnesota for a second, like until Ant breaks through, he will have kind of this same type of monkey on his back type thing put on him by the national media. To me, this feels more like Luka's playoff run than Tatum's, but they're dealing in much different contexts. Tatum has a 6-man super team, and Luka has a very tailored pecking order behind him, a very complimentary pieces and stuff. So to me, that's like he is wearing the cape far more than Tatum has been, to the point where you could argue about who should have been Eastern Conference Finals MVP, but Jaylen Brown got it. So like Luka was unanimous.
Yeah.
The voting stuff is always funky, and Andre Iguodala will tell you otherwise. But yeah, to me, this just feels more like this. We will look back on this playoff run as like Luka's play, even if they lose. Like I feel like this was more of his hero story than Jayson Tatum's hero story.
I think it depends a lot on how the finals unfold. I mean, really hot take there. To this point, yeah, I mean, this is like it hasn't felt, maybe I'm just sort of oblivious and head in the sand on this. It hasn't felt to me like the overwhelming, overarching narrative of the last, month and a half of basketball is like Luka Doncic arising and, ascending to the throne. It hasn't felt like that's the story of the playoffs. It is the story that we find ourselves with now because of like what he just did to tear apart. Like, and then you step back and you're like, well, they beat the number 1 seed in the West. They beat the number 1 defense in the West. And he has like ripped the hearts out of these teams in these games to do it. And again, zoom further out and take the 10,000 foot view, as our pal Tom Haberstroh noted on his newsletter, his Substack this morning. Luka is on track to lead this postseason in points, rebounds, and assists. That's only been done one time before, and it was last year, and it was Nikola Jokic in the course of having this same narrative run, right? Of like, this is where I now take over and as the best player in the world. Luka is averaging more than 28 points, 9 rebounds, and 8 assists per game in this playoffs. The only other guys who have ever done that in a postseason where they played at least 10 games, Jokic, LeBron, and Oscar Robertson. Like, he is in the midst of an historic run and enters this series as, I think, the unquestioned best player in it, the most overwhelming force in it, the guy who is best capable of sort of just grabbing a game by the scruff of its neck and making it do what he wants. He has broken 2 top 5 defenses in the last 2 rounds, and really, like, it was a masterpiece of what he can do with the way he controls the game. If he's making threes and the step backs are going, and he's also now more willing to get off the ball and take and make catch and shoot threes, which is, always that thing we've said about Harden forever was the difficulty for him. Luka has adapted and embraced that, being able to play more off of Kyrie and being able to play more off of, if I get off the ball and we are able to attack advantage basketball, it gets back to me, I can maybe make something more happen with it there. And then you start blitzing and he sees every pass and can make all of them and can make passes that you don't see, like that Manu Ginobili kind of something out of nothing quality. He has shown all of that now. If they get the doors beaten off of them in 5 games, we're probably not going to remember that. We're going to remember like this is the Celtics proving that they were in fact the most dominant team all season long, and that 64-18 and historic margin of victory and historic net rating, that none of that was a fluke. That was all for real and deserved to be treated as such. And Tatum, I mean, yeah, like there's a way to look at it where you're like, shit, he wasn't the MVP of the conference finals. He's shot 44% from the field and 29% from 3-point range in this postseason. It hasn't felt dominant. There's too often those, possessions where he's just like meandering and goes into a step back mid-range or long 2. That's like, why are you taking that shot at that point, that clock time in the clock, whatever. And like, he's still, but like he's averaging more than 25 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists a game, and like been the linchpin on both ends of the floor for the best team in the league. Like at a certain point, whether it looks exactly the way you want it to from your ball dominant apex predator wing player or whatever, like, that dude's really friggin' good. And maybe maybe he's closer to 10th than to first in terms of like the best player in the league. But we have seen Tatum be the best player on the floor against Giannis Antetokounmpo teams, against Joel Embiid teams. We've seen him. He has cooked Dallas the 2 times that they've played this season. Yes, not the same version of the Mavericks that we're seeing right now, but I think 72 points in 2 games against that team. You know, like he's capable of putting up crooked numbers and of controlling the game in that same way. Maybe I wouldn't bet on him to do it every game against Luka, but I wouldn't bet against him being capable of doing it. And with the supporting cast he's got and the questions that they might be able to make Dallas answer with their spacing, with their defensive comportment, the multiple guys they can throw at Kyrie, and then if you sort of disrupt the 2-man, like make it all Luka, then you got a better shot at it, you know? Like, all of which is to say, it does feel like the big story we're going to have to start telling ourselves, especially over this next week off, is like, this is Luka versus Tatum for who's got next. And I don't know that that's necessarily right. This might wind up being much more about like who gets up more threes and how's Kristaps Porzingis looking. Yes. But there's if nothing else, both of these guys have put themselves in position to where with a big next couple of weeks, they can ascend to a different level in terms of their overall estimation, which is already pretty high.
Yeah. And it's not to denigrate Tatum. It's just
sure.
Luka is more of a, I mean, there's a graphic that came out today from Synergy of points created for teammates as the ball handler on an ISO pick or post during the playoffs. Luka, total of 270. Tatum, obviously less games played. 4 games less played. But he's at 112. And Luka, 16.9 per game, Tatum 8 per game. That's also a reflection of their roles, right?
Yes.
Luka's running everything. And Derek White is operating post-game crunch time possessions, and Drew Holiday's operating post-game crunch time possessions.
Which is a really good, like, and it's the thing that rarely comes up in discussions of Tatum. And I can be blinkered on this too, so I want to make sure that since you brought it up, like, would the Celtics as an ecosystem function as well if Tatum was more like I need to have the 35% usage rate. I need to be the one taking all those shots. Like if not for like being the kind of player who raises your floor by filling every gap, but is willing to also get off of it and create more space for Jaylen Brown, for Kristaps Porzingis, the touches for Derek White, like being willing to get off of it and supplement and complement in some of those moments. If not for that, maybe the Celtics aren't so friggin' good overall. That that lens, I think, maybe gets obscured somewhat when we get so focused on who is the alpha, the individual number one top scorer, top creator. There's also the general like rising tide lifts all boats. And I think Tatum is maybe more of that kind of guy, though he's capable of pitching daggers himself.